today, India is actually, becoming wealthier much faster than it used to be and is becoming wealthier much younger. Demand for a wealth management service or a product is not a problem. It is the supply that is the problem. If you humanize the brand, okay, you will realize that a brand speaks or a brand should rather speak in a certain way, right? Therefore, it's very important to have a certain brand voice and tone. Content creation and availability of content at a certain pace has become a requisite and a mandatory for everyone.
Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with Indiefolio. Today we have Sujay Raj with us, the Chief Marketing Officer at the Novama Group. Sujay's had a huge career. He's worked for over 18 years with top brands and agencies, and he's also made it to Business World's 40 under 40 list. Thanks so much for your time, Sujay, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kavan. Thank you for inviting me. I hope we'll have a good chat today.
Definitely, I'll get started, and I wanted to ask you about your journey so far. From what I see, I think since the onset, right, from I think what you studied to where you focused on, marketing's been a huge focus for you. So when is it that you decided that marketing is the career which I want to build?
That actually dates really back in time. It was right in my Bachelor of Management Studies, where I actually got a chance to intern with a lot of these organizations as a part of the projects that we used to take. And marketing as a function actually always fancied me in terms of being able to kind of contribute creatively. Again, because we were part of a management school, there were these structures that the school had actually put in together, where we had our own departments, and I was a part of the marketing team of the school as well. And therefore, it actually occurred to me that this is a stream that actually I'll possibly fit much better. It kind of panders to my interest, and therefore, I thought marketing would be the right stream for me to get into. What also helped me was, right after college, I got a placement, and it was too difficult to resist the opportunity of getting into the world's second oldest profession right after school. And therefore, the opportunity was too good to be left. So therefore, I took it up, and I kind of got gate crashed into the world of advertising largely. From there onwards, it's been a journey where kind of, moved to the mecca of, marketing communication for that matter, which was Lowell Lintas at that point in time. And then from there on, the journey has been, largely marketing and communication, and largely marketing as such, right, as a part of the entire overall deliverables for a marketing professional. So that's been the journey, yeah. And that's where it all started, right at the beginning of my career, right at the onset of my career life, for that matter, after college and after school.
Awesome. I have a few questions there actually. When I talk to a bunch of my friends who are probably in the 25s, 27s, and they're deciding, what route to focus on, the first question everybody thinks of is brand side or agency side. And I've seen with you that, you've gone to agencies, then you've gone to brands, you've gone back to agencies and back to brands. So what do you think is the right approach for a young marketer today? Why should I go to the brand side? Why should I go to the agency side? And if you had to choose, what path would you pick?
Actually, the times have changed so dramatically, Kaman, that it's not anymore the same that it used to be, at my time, right? Experimentation with your career to be able to fully recognize your potential and to be able to be satisfied with what you do is very critical. And it was critical at that point in time too, but it's even more critical now. And I think I am seeing a lot many people who are now coming into the stream and to the work stream are very clear about what actually they want to do in their lives and what is it that they actually prefer while growing up. And therefore, whether it is brand or whether it is agency, I don't think there is a clear answer to that, right? There is a reason for you to kind of exist in a certain environment ecosystem because you like doing something, right? I know people who have stuck around in the agency world because they really love doing what they do. And if it satisfies their, their existence, then I think that is what matters. So there is no one, solution to this or one guide to this, which is basically, you take up this or you take up that. I think it's all about experimenting, and today's world actually allows you to do that even better because of multiple policies, multiple environments that workplaces are actually encouraging people to take. and you are able to kind of, pursue your career as well as passion together in multiple organizations. Like, for example, take our own organization. We have not gone back to a work from office completely as yet. In fact, we've continued the policy of being able to work, say, for example, 3 days out of the week in office, and the rest of the days you can work from wherever you are, right? And that actually helps you balance your life, also helps you, pursue your career, pursue your passion together. And I think a lot of the today's generation are very clear of what they want to do. They don't want to kind of completely be doing this 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 that, at least was the environment when I started my career. And it's brilliant. In fact, you get the best of the minds and you get the ability to kind of, choose your career too. So it works both ways.
Got it. Yeah, I think it's been a common trait, a lot of people who are really successful in marketing say, expose yourself to multiple things at the onset when the risk is low. So then at least you can define that. But still, I think you must be having some unique perspectives, right? Let's say if I was to take a plunge, can you paint a picture on how working at an agency is different than working at a brand?
See, what an agency life brings to you is the plethora of brands that you can work for, right? So, for example, in your early days, if you are wanting to, experience a lot of brands together, right? Say, for example, multiple categories, multiple verticals for that matter, BFSI, automotive, gyms and jewelry, fast-moving consumer goods, consumer durables, whatever it may be, right? If you feel that there is there is a kick that you get by actually trying to solve for challenges that are faced by various brands in various categories and verticals, that's the way to go, because that is where you'll get that, right? To be able to kind of solve, like, for example, I mean, maybe you'll ask me this later, but maybe I'll kind of give you a sense of it. In my early days, I was given the chance to crack a problem for a two-wheeler brand. All right. And I don't think if I wasn't in an agency environment, I would have got that problem and successfully been able to solve for it and contribute towards, towards actually ensuring that a business problem is actually overcome, right? So that is, the environment that you get when you get onto the agency side. Multiple things, like I was talking about, solving a business problem, but it could also be, launch of a completely new brand in the country. And, very seldom do you get a chance to do that if you are probably, joining a existing brand for that matter. And so those are the challenge, those are the opportunities that you get while you're working at that, in those outfits. But yes, of course, over a period of time, you also feel and this is my personal journey, you also feel the lack of, ownership for any particular one brand, right? Because you're jumping from one brand to another to try and solve everything. And this, I think, is a part that actually suits everyone differently, right? For me, that was the feeling. For, like I told you, a few of my friends who've actually continued in advertising, that's never been the story. That, in fact, has never been the problem. They actually enjoy solving for multiple issues, challenges, and opportunities much more than really owning one particular brand. So that's where, there's no one particular way to kind of go about doing this. Yes, of course, experimenting at the onset of your career is the wise thing to do. And, getting exposed to multiple streams obviously helps. Honestly, you get experience out of what you actually do yourself, right? And you must find your answers yourselves.
I think a follow-up there now is there are a lot of people who are in senior positions in marketing right now, and they must be carving their road or their journey to become a CMO one day. Now, it's been a personal observation that usually brands tend to hire CMOs who have built a career as on the brand side, right? Like I've been interviewing a lot of CMOs like you, and that's been the track. It's rare, as per me, that somebody who's had a significant experience, let's say in an agency as a leadership, ends up converting into a CMO for one individual brand. Could be wrong, but if you were to I guess recommend some vice president marketing or someone who's probably in the senior positions, what's the right approach to ensure that a few years from now you'll be a candidate for a chief marketing officer?
So, Kavan, I wouldn't be able to speak about other people, but my own philosophy of, getting people into your team is the fact that I always hire for the right attitude, right? I always hire for people who will fit the team and fit the the environment that we've built as a workplace ourselves, right? For me, capability can be built over a period of time and on the job, right? But if I don't have the candidate who is a attitudinally the right candidate, then it's a problem, right? So whether that person's coming from an agency background and is going to be able to take on a CMO role, or for that matter, is coming from another brand and is going to be able to take up the CMO role, I wouldn't want to kind of differentiate or maybe create any kind of, a rift between the two approaches. For me, attitude is important. The ability to kind of bring a certain, and this is again, what I try and do, the ability to bring a certain, what would I say, a healthy dose of your right brain to the mix or to the job is important. If you're able to do that, whether you're coming from an agency background or you're coming from, a brand, it doesn't really matter for me. Yes, of course, when you kind of want to hire at a certain senior position, you need a certain level of maturity, you need a certain level of experience, and you need a certain level of having been done there kind of a person who actually is able to guide and bring a lot of the learnings of various industries into the role, right? So that becomes an important thing and the right attitude for me. Anecdotally, it brings me a instance in my life. And, I was interviewing for early days in my career, I was interviewing for a luxury brand. Okay. And one of the requisites that the hiring manager at that point in time said that, can I have you from, a luxury industry or a luxury segment to come into this part or to come into this side of the world? For me, I thought that was a very myopic, way to look at someone, because what you're hiring for is the ability to kind of understand the world of marketing. If the person understands the world of marketing, he definitely or she definitely understands that there's no one solution that is true for, the bottom of the pyramid consumers or for the luxury consumers, right? So if you are able to kind of showcase that, that you understand the world of marketing very well, it shouldn't be a challenge. But, I thought that I specifically felt as an experience of having gone through it myself, that the hiring manager was extremely myopic in being able to kind of, look at only one particular, aspect. And he was okay rather to kind of, let go of everything else that a person brings to the table.
Understood. Yeah, I think attitude and I think having a strategic brain is extremely important. Yeah. I believe that's more important than anything, be it your background or your education. So right. I was asking a couple of my friends that, hey, I'm talking to a few CMOs and they're all folks in marketing. What's some random things you'd like to ask them? And one person asked me this, and I actually work with a bunch of my clients, and even I have that question, which is a lot of brands at scale have a head of marketing role and they have a CMO as well. How does that really differ? I understand it could be brand to brand, but if you could throw in some insight there, it'll be helpful.
I think it could possibly happen in businesses like ours, right? For example, Nuvama Group is a combination of 7 businesses together, right? And each of those businesses are largely, large businesses. They are not like small outfits. And each of those businesses, while we've clubbed them into 3 largely, one is wealth management, the other is asset management, and the third is capital markets. Even within the wealth management ecosystem, we have 2 businesses within it. Like there's Nuvama Wealth, there's Nuvama Private. In the asset management, you have Nuvama Asset Management largely. And in the capital markets, you have multiple more businesses like Nuvama Asset Services, Nuvama Institutional Equities, Nuvama Investment Banking, Nuvama Special Situations, Nuvama so-and-so, right? Now, it's practically impossible for me to kind of get a line on each of those businesses threadbare, right? And therefore, in situations like these is where I am assuming, what you mentioned would happen. Like we do have a marketing, we call it the marketing lead. We don't call it the head of marketing, but we call the marketing lead of that business. Actually, whose responsibility is largely that business, right? And to ensure the marketing needs of those businesses are actually taken care of. And that person docks into me to be able to kind of give me an overview of what is happening. And I'm kind of navigating the entire Nuvama Group together in a certain cohesive, coherent manner, right? Where we don't see any schizophrenic behavior for the brand in being able to kind of come across in a consistent manner for our consumers. Whether it is, the mass affluent consumer, whether it's the ultra HNI customer, whether it's an institutional customer, there needs to be one consistent brand that goes out. So I'm assuming that in businesses which have this kind of complex structure is where you would see this, a head of marketing or a marketing lead for a certain business docking into the CMO.
Understood.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And these days, what also happens is actually, Kavan, the fact is that Corpcom is led centrally, right? Corpcom then becomes the responsibility of the person who is actually leading the team at the center. And to be able to, drive those relationships with media. You see, customers are not only your end customers, right? Or retail customers or, direct to use customers. The customers for us are also our own people, right? An organization's customers, the very important stakeholder for us is our own people.
Right.
And therefore, to be able to drive the organization's agenda and narrative with our own people is also an important function to follow.
Right.
And those kind of things actually come in, at the center, and therefore the head of marketing, or for that matter, the CMO at the group level, plays an important role.
Got it. Yeah, I think it's a role or a need at an evolved stage of a company, clearly.
Yes.
But yeah, I think fully understand that. I want to now jump into some stuff I think you've said or you do, be it wealth management or some conversations I've at least tuned into. One thing was on brand voice. I think you've consistently maintained that brand voice is extremely important. My question to you is what's your general outlook on brand voice? If I'm a marketer, if I've just joined a company, what's been your go-to strategies to define a brand voice, and how have you seen it really helps you?
Brand tone and personality and voice are very important, Kavan. I think, you can't really, like I said, you can't be a schizo as a brand. Like, if, in my opinion, if you humanize the brand, okay, you will realize that a brand speaks, or a brand should rather speak in a certain way, right? Today, Kavan, I know Kavan. Kavan, I can make out Kavan even if I kind of get to know a few traits about Kavan, and I can possibly point a finger at him and say, hey, this sounds like Kavan, right? But if Kavan actually was, portraying crazy, different kind of personality traits, it would be difficult for me to point a finger at someone who's specifically that person, right? In a human case, it still is okay, because you may be a very, what do I say? You may be a very, very interesting and a colorful personality. But a brand, to have that kind of a personality, is very, very difficult, because we want to build memory structures in the minds of the customer. And if you end up, creating a lot of confusion about who your brand is, or what your brand speaks like, or in which tone does the brand speak with the customer, it's extremely difficult. For example, let me give you a case in point of one of the largest laundry brands in the country, Dirt Is Good. Now, if you've been seeing that work on Dirt Is Good in India, it's called Daag Achhe Hai. You know that this brand will speak in this manner through the lens of children, through the lens of children being able to kind of do what they need to do and portray a certain value and be not worried about getting dirty, right? And you know that at the end of the day, there will be a certain closure that the brand will come and say that agar ye karne se kuch acha hota to daag achhe hai, right? So therefore, you are able to build those memory structures, and the next time I don't have to remind you, hey, I'm the same brand actually talking to you.
Right.
That actually gets registered automatically, subconsciously. You identify the brand very well. Right. So therefore, it's very important to have a certain brand voice and tone. Very often when brands don't have that, it's extremely difficult to remember the brand after an activity is done. Like, for example, it's only not when a campaign is rolled out on a certain brand is when you want to remember the brand, or the marketer's agenda is to actually ensure that the brand is remembered post the activity as well. And if I consistently and continuously keep building that in a certain way, then I think the consumer will find it easy and simpler to identify with the brand. So therefore, I think voice and tone and personality is very important. One other thing that, one must keep in mind on things like this is the fact that, you must not actually have too many personality traits for your brand, right? It's going to be extremely challenging to be able to live on to each and every personality traits. Like, for example, in every brief at the end of the, activity sheet that you give to a brief or to an agency, you will realize that there is a personality trait kind of a thing that you fill in towards the brief end. And most likely, most of the times I've seen a lot of people put in like 7-8 personality traits that you would want a brand to actually personify. So you must be very clear, sharp, and focused about what personality your brand should don.
No, I think fully resonate with you, where I think 2 or 3 is the magic number, and it does really help a brand. I'll tell you about my dilemma with this. I'm a small company. Okay, we're nowhere near like Nuvama, for example. And usually in a company with like 40, 50 employees where we are at, the founders really define, what the brand voice or tonality could be. And being a marketplace for creative people, we obviously have engaged in these exercises. And personally, I'm really confused as to how to answer what's Indiefolio's brand voice, because I can't help but think, is it what I feel? And then I'm like, no, maybe the customers should define that. If I was the one who's supposed to kind of put in those personalities, it's pretty difficult for me to even start on how do I think about what my brand's voice should be or tonality should be. So is there like a thumb rule, or is there any advice you have on how founders could think about their brand voice?
At least in my opinion, it is a inside out approach where you must define what your brand actually should stand for and how it should be communicated, right? Let me give you an example of our own brand. We've gone through an entire rebranding exercise, and therefore this entire thing came up in our ability to kind of define the brand too. And we obviously had like a plethora of words that were put up on the screen when we decided how we want to behave and what are our personality traits and what is the humanization of our brand. But honestly, if we were to take all those words, like we had around 17, 18 words on the slide, and we were wondering how are we going to even stand for anything in these kind of things. But you will soon realize that you will be able to bucket a lot of those things into a certain larger maybe definition of those things. Like, for example, we believe that we want our personality of our brand needs to be empathetic. Okay. It needs to be smart, and it needs to be authentic, right? These are the three things that we want to kind of go about doing or communicating about our brand in anything and everything that we do. So even if you look at our work that we go out and put out in the market, you will realize that we will ensure that our work always stands true on these three things, right? We will say it as it is supposed to be said and to be meant. Right. We won't hide away from saying a no if it is required for for us to say no, especially in an advisory business, in a service industry. You will very, very seldom find people who stand their ground, right? And therefore, the ability to say no, in our opinion, only commands respect. Because then the customer actually ends up telling us that, okay, I wanted to do it in a certain way, but because you said no, I kind of heard you and changed my trajectory. And thank you for having done that, because at the end of the day, we are the experts in their lives, right? And we bring financial advisory or simplify some financial advisory for that person. So that's authenticity again for us, right? Empathetic is basically, our ability to identify what the customer really wants, right? And ensuring that we put ourselves in the shoes of the customers to be able to understand the journey the customer is willing to take with their money. And in today's day and age, you can't not be smart, right? You will have to be, present on various platforms and be able to speak in the manner that the platform demands. Like if I am on LinkedIn and I kind of speak in a manner that an Insta platform would speak, then there's a huge disconnect, right? And I can't do vice versa. Right. So I will have to be smart and be able to be, communicate with my customers in the platforms or on the platforms that they generally are. So authentic, empathy, and smart are the three personality traits that we want to kind of follow. And we have defined it ourselves. And to answer your questions, it's an inside out approach where we have defined that we will stand by these personality traits.
Correct. I think what my biggest takeaway from this was is that the inside out approach is great, but what you need to really be good at is understanding your customer. I think instead of relying on you and what your founder or co-founder thinks, really try and understand who your customer is and what value I think they are getting from you. So you'll be able to build a lot from how they feel interacting with your brand. So fully resonate with you on that.
Where we started, and I think most of the companies should do that. As a pure marketer, I think that's where a lot of value creation happens for any company, whether it is starting up or relaunching or rebranding. We straight went to defining the purpose of the organization, right? We had to ensure that we continue with what we felt was necessary for us to take forward, but at the same time define a certain way of living and existing for our own selves. So therefore, it was important for us to first define who we were, and that's where the journey started. So the entire leadership actually got into, a room for 2 days. In fact, we trashed out a lot of reasons to exist. We defined a purpose for ourselves. Once we defined the purpose for ourselves, we, took that as the base to brief our identity agency to help us create an identity that was true to the purpose that we wanted to live by. And once that was done, we went through the journey of finding a name. For example, we had explored roughly around 1,000 names, and we still didn't have a name, right?
Wow.
To go ahead with, because of the nature of the business, right? One is, like I said, we had so many entities and so many businesses that the name had to be true for all of them. It can't be resonating with a certain line of business and do nothing for another line of business, right? That would be, devastating for the brand. Also, what was important is that you have operations across the world. You can't be in a situation where your name that you kind of define or suggest or zero in has a weird and an alternative meaning in another part of the country or another part of the world, and or it becomes a very difficult word for people to actually latch onto, right? So you had to ensure that the sensibilities of various geographies across the world had to be kept intact. Third is you had to go through the official registration of the name and the logo type with the registrar, and to find a name that actually you're able to do or register as a trademark or as a copyright for your own self was an extremely challenging process, because most of the brands would, when they have a certain brand, they would protect the brand across multiple classes and not restrict to their own business class for that matter. So, for example, if we had a name that we felt really good about and we didn't really have a competing brand in the same industry, but it was still not, possible for us to take it on because it was protected by another brand in a different completely business category, right? So, or even a part of it was possibly, taken.
Correct.
So there we were, after having explored 1,000 names, we still didn't have a name. One fine day, me and a few other business leaders actually walked over to the agency and we said, listen, we are in dire straits. We don't have a name and we are supposed to actually transition. What do we do? So we started discussing, debating, and there came in a name where, it was a direction that I gave to the team out there, which is where it kind of became Nuvama. Nuvama is largely a coined word. And the way I thought about it is, if I'm going to do something or if I'm going to be something new for the entire world, it should be capturing this entire sentiment of trying and bringing a new perspective towards what we do. And if we are in the business of wealth and fortune or creating and managing money or, growing and managing money, then it should be a reflection of what that means, right? So Vama in Sanskrit means wealth and fortune, right? It also means the wisdom of Lord Shiva. It also means on the left of you, right? So it has multiple meanings, but Vama's predominant meaning is wealth and fortune. And that's where this entire word got coined as Nuvama, where we felt that it was, so there was a framework that we followed, right? And it's important to have a framework in a very, very subjective scheme of things, right? Because a name that I like, you would hate, or for that matter, the other way around, right? And therefore, to build some kind of objectivity in a subjective scenario, you need a framework to ensure that everyone's kind of on the same page. So we had a voting system within the system where we kind of, let around 10 leadership members vote for the name that actually resonated well for them. And based on a certain vote amongst, say, around 10, 15 names that we had shortlisted, which were available and which were, possible for us to take on, we actually voted all those names out, and Nuvama actually stood out first because of 2-3 reasons, right? One is that it's a coined word, it was available. The second is that it is easy on the tongue, it is not very difficult. It didn't mean anything else in any part of the world, because it's a coined word, so there's no word that existed like that. Fourth is that it is, in the BFSI segment, if you look at it, you will have a lot of names like ICICI, which are basically acronyms of, they are large names. There was no modern Indian name that existed for a BFSI category. And that also played a huge tick for the name. And we thought that Nuvama was a nice mix and a nice confluence of modernism and Indian roots and values for that matter, because the name came from Sanskrit. And the best part was that it was available in every part of the world that we were operating in. So that actually led to Nuvama. In fact, the identity creation, if you see, in my on the frame behind, also has a story, because we defined the purpose in the realm of customer centricity. See, for a BFSI category, customer centricity becomes extremely important and most important. It's true for every category for that matter, but in the BFSI segment, it is actually even more important and pertinent, right? And for us, we define our purpose as always in your interest, period, right? So your meaning the customer. And we added the word period as a finality to the entire statement, because we said, listen, if we were at a crossroad where, we were to decide which way to go, and maybe say if we went down a certain path and we made a lot of money, but if we went down a certain path and we didn't make as much money, but we helped the customer more, there should never be a doubt in our minds which way to go. And that's where the finality came in, saying period, right? And therefore, that actually led to the creation of our identity as well. So if you look at the two, circles or semicircles that we have, one actually is an N, which is the N, and the U on the top is the customer, which is the N and U. And because we always said that we will be on the side of the customer all throughout, we almost represented it by actually showing the customer on our shoulders, right? We are always lifting the customer up to ensure that the customer is, ready to kind of partner us and win with us all throughout. So the identity actually came from that genesis. And then it was a task to ensure that we create a very, very modern brand in the space of BFSI and wealth management, because I didn't want to create another stately brand, which was, restricted to a few, right? Because we have business interest in the mass affluent as well. And therefore, to create a very niche upmarket, of course, upmarket for sure, but to create a very niche brand that people didn't identify with at large would be a challenge. So therefore, if you walk into our office, if you're in Bombay sometime, come over. But if you walk into our office, you wouldn't really feel that you are walking into a wealth management office. You would possibly feel that you are still in a very young office, where there's a lot of importance and focus given to, being comfortable where you work.
Right.
So a lot of color, a lot of modern interpretation of our, of our identity, things like that.
Brilliant. I think thanks for, unpacking all of that for us. I was also just wondering, it must be such a huge exercise. Other than being regulated, it's also a brand with so many touch points, I assume. So that must be another headache, right? So I want to know, who are the partners, like who are the identity agencies, who are the creative agencies?
Yeah, so we actually partnered with the WPP Group.
Okay.
Core Consulting helped us define our purpose. Then we bought in Landor to help us design our identity and give us a name and identity. And then we bought in Ogilvy to help us communicate. So we actually got the WPP Group to work with us throughout our entire process.
Fantastic. So in your opinion, like when you go out there and decide to do something like this, which is like rebranding, the biggest question or the biggest challenge I think you'll have is to get that recall. So how do you solve for that? I know you had a very exciting, like funny campaign. Actually, I really enjoyed it. So what was the point of that, and how do you plan to, I think it's very recent. It's just happened. So
yes,
how do you plan to do that?
So I'll tell you, this also, Kavan, was a journey, right? And before even what you saw was what we decided to kind of go down and communicate about ourselves almost 6-7 months after we actually transitioned. Okay. And for those 6-7 months, like I told you, what we were doing is we were trying to communicate and ensuring that our first important stakeholder, that is our own people, actually understood us better. All right. Because a process like this, a change like this creates a lot of questions, an environment of, doubt, and an environment of, nervousness within the system, right? And that's where we focused a lot of our energies first on ensuring that our own people are at ease with the entire transition and with the way that we were actually moving ahead. Right. So the first leg of our entire outreach program was therefore based on, creating brand ambassadors out of our own people, right? Because they are the people who are going to go out in the market and, peddle the brand Nuvama. And therefore, for them to believe in the story of Nuvama was extremely critical. And if we'd not given that time to them, I think we wouldn't have had a successful transition. To be honest, the one goal that the marketing team had taken up, as a part of this entire transitioning exercise was to ensure that we don't lose a single customer in this transition process. Nothing gives me more pleasure to say that we didn't lose one, and we actually ensured that we grew by a far better number than we were growing in the Edelweiss ecosystem. But that's a factor of the industry, the stage where it is, and things like that. The growth is actually coming from a lot of that factor.
Right.
But the fact that this transition didn't, create, or rather the effort that we put in to ensure that everyone, including our own people and our customers, were at ease to be able to understand and, get the fact that we were transitioning from Edelweiss to Nuvama, the reason why we were doing it, the fact that there's no change in leadership, the fact that everything remains the same. And all of that was something that was very important for people to understand. And also, because we were coming out of a large business house in the country, it was identified that a lot of people within the system also didn't know the leadership of another business of the same organization, right? So, for example, if you are a part of the investment banking team, you would not really have anything to do with the wealth team for that matter. And therefore, your focus is largely investment banking, and whoever in whatever is running the wealth business is the least of importance for you. But that's really not the way I think one should actually be running the business. People should know each other well, and therefore a lot of things that we did. So we embarked on a campaign which was internally developed by this team, and we actually ensured that the leadership took part in that campaign. In fact, we developed an entire video series, a content series that we developed with our leaders, right? And we got our leaders to follow a certain game plan where, it was led by the CEO himself, the group CEO himself, where, he, one fine day when we were finally transitioned, he sent out an email to everyone, pouring his heart out about why and what we are doing. And the only thing that he didn't do was to let people know what the name was and what it looked like. Okay. But he actually told that we are changing. And it so came out that once that letter went out, the next day there was a video that was released internally on our platforms where he acknowledged the fact that he'd forgotten to do something, that he'd forgotten to, tell people about what the name is and what the identity looks like. And while he was in the midst of actually revealing it, there was a bouncer who actually would stop him from doing it. So what happened is, for a good 4 months or 2 or 3 months, in fact, we led this entire journey, taking in every leader of the organization to actually, create this sense of excitement, curiosity, things like that, where people were on the verge of revealing what we were, but were being stopped from letting people know. And it went on for a little while. And then we finally concluded all of those activities with a massive town hall where we, got all our employees. We are 3,000 plus employees into one room, and we got them into one room and we explained to them. We did it with the fireside chat. I took on, very difficult questions with the leadership. I, in fact, interviewed them. I, asked them very tough questions, which I'm sure the consumers, or for that matter, the employees themselves had in their minds, right? And we put them on the spot, and they were gracious enough to answer all of it. And therefore, that actually built in a lot of warmth within the system. And once this was done, we also embarked on another leg of this entire activity, which was about ensuring that people understood what we were doing. Like, for example, a new name could not be, sometimes, though we think it's easy, people may think it's not very easy. So we kind of rolled out an entire, again, a content piece, not done through emailers or anything of that sort. We took music as our, as a help to kind of communicate a lot of things. And we developed rap songs around the name and we said, okay, it is Nuvama, not Navama, it is Nivama, it's not all of that. So there were some 10 rap songs that we created about letting people know that you can be a brand boss and you should be a brand boss. And therefore, when you kind of go out and talk to people or engage with any stakeholder, regulatory, customers, whoever it is, represent the brand well, right? And therefore, a lot of educational series content was developed, and that was then put within the system to be able to understand what we are doing, why we are doing, what's the purpose, how do you pronounce the name, why did we kind of do something like all of that was explained to people through rap songs.
Got it.
That was done. It's only after all of this, which took us 6-7 months to do, and when people were comfortable, is when we went out to the external world to communicate about our transition, right? And even here, there was a lot of thought that was put into why we should communicate the way what we did, right? And we keep doing a lot of customer studies. We do a lot of consumer studies on a half-yearly basis. In fact, we always meet our existing clients, our prospective clients, and we get a sense check of what the customers are, feeling about the services that they get from us or from the industry rather, and where they are and what do they feel about any service that is getting offered in the similar industry, whether from us or from the competitor. So we do a lot of these customer studies on an ongoing basis. And one such study that we'd done the recent one had revealed that there was this sense of transactionalism that had come into a lot of these customers, and they felt always that the fact that the company that is advising us on our money is largely advising because they want to kind of make more profit on whatever they advise. Thanks to, a lot of industry issue, a lot of the way that, relationship managers behave with their customers. Many a times you have relationship managers who say, ki, "Achha, mera year-end number nahi ho raha, sir, aap kuch isme paisa dal do." You just have kind of focused a lot of calls that you get from, financial institutions that actually say things like these, right? And that's where this entire transactionalism has come in, where they say, okay, most of the times the advisory is not in my interest. It is always in the organization's interest. Okay, that's the, nichod of the study that we had got, right? And that was on the table for us. Now, contrast this to what was happening in the industry by other brands. A lot of brands were in the race to actually win or communicate, or rather tell people that trust us. We studied Achhe Advisors, Sache Advisors, Zindagi Ke Baad Bhi, Zindagi Ke Saath Bhi. In our opinion, we felt that, trust cannot be asked of. Trust can only be, gained. And it's not like the inside out approach, right? I can keep telling you, trust me, trust me, trust me. You won't trust me, right? You will trust me only after having seen me deliver things, do some things, or hear me. It's only when you kind of make an opinion about anyone else. And that's the truth about the brand as well. So it's a response that you seek from people to be respected. And when do you kind of get respected? When you have a certain authority or the balls to say something, right? And stand by, right? That's what you actually, that's when you actually trust a certain person or a certain brand. And was another parameter in our minds. The third parameter was that, we are a wealth management firm so in the BFSI segment, the largest share of voice would largely be with, say, for example, the banks, because they are so omnipresent and they have massive budgets to go out and communicate about themselves, right? So the largest share of voice is with banks. After that, if you think, it could be with, say, for example, mutual fund, it could be insurance, it could be regulatory bodies like AMFI, it could be any other, for that matter, firm for that matter, right? The share of voice for a player like me, which is a small figment of the BFSI category and a very niche, is very low because multiple factors. We don't have massive budgets. We are also not as big as the banks and themselves. Right. So therefore, for me to kind of get any kind of messaging out to the customer and make the customer realize that I am talking, I had to punch way above my weight, right? I couldn't have done Sache Advisors. I couldn't have done Hum Hai Na. I couldn't have done the melodrama that existed in the category already. Right. So these three factors converged into what we did, right? And that's where we kept in mind also the filter of our tone and the personality that we wanted to portray in the market, right? We said authentic, we said empathy, and we said, smart. And that's what actually led to, ensuring that the purpose statement that we defined for ourselves, which is the guiding statement for this organization, for our existence, was converted into a customer-facing proposition. That is what led to Let's Do It Right. Okay. And we said, if I want to actually be on the side of the customer, period, if I have to be truthful, authentic, empathetic, and smart, and if I have these three factors that I need to consider, the best encapsulation of my customer-facing proposition would be Let's Do It Right. It is actually straightforward, to the point, ensures that we actually go out and tell people that here we are and what we do, right? And this is what we believe in.
Right.
The thought process behind Let's Do It Right, Kavan, was we will do things the way it needs to be done if it is right. And again, we paid a lot of effort and time to, execute this in the most interesting manner. And therefore, it was the execution that was also thought through in a very interesting manner. In fact, we launched the campaign with a LinkedIn teaser campaign of sorts, where, our protagonists in our campaign were the chameleons, the tortoise, and the parrot. And on LinkedIn, we had, all these guys becoming wealth managers and actually reaching out to connect with people, saying that, hey, I'm a chameleon. And you know what? The best trait of mine is to change colors. I'll probably not stand by anything that I say, and all of that. And I'll be the best perfect match for you to be a wealth manager who dare to connect. So suddenly you saw a lot of people speaking about, who are these animals that have suddenly come in and are requesting for a connection request on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that was then leveraged to actually launch the campaign on the back of saying, hey, you know what? There are a lot of things that are not right with this industry. And if you want to ensure that you bank with the best, you ensure that what kind of a wealth manager should be working with you, we believe in doing it this way, bank with us. The other thing that we also wanted to do is to ensure that we, communicated our transition as a part of this messaging as well. If we had just focused on communicating the transition, in my opinion, that would have been a waste of our marketing dollars. We took this opportunity to communicate our purpose and alongside also communicate the transition together in a very interesting manner and in a very thoughtful manner.
Oh, thank you so much. I think this was amazing. I think you unpacked it so deeply. I don't think I recall ever hearing in depth about, how a services company has done this rebranding and done such a cool marketing campaign, especially in the HNI, wealth management, B2B space, right? And LinkedIn being, I think, an initial, place to actually have some virality or some excitement. So that was incredible and very unique that what you did with your internal team also. We, as a services company, I know that's the biggest challenge, right? Even at 40 people, I'm like, hey, how does everybody speak? What we stand for is so confusing. Can imagine at 3,000-4,000, that problem must be at a different scale altogether. So thanks for unpacking all of that. We'll head to the last portions very quickly. Wanted to understand from you as someone who's done so much marketing for so many consumers, right? If I was to start in the wealth management space, which, as you know, is 0.1 or actually maybe 0.1 to 1% of India, probably your top customers, maybe even lesser in that percentage. Yeah. How is it different for me as a marketer, right? Like what are the things you've learned in terms of what generally works in these sectors?
I have to break a few myths out here, Kavan. See, what needs to be understood is that today, India is actually, becoming wealthier much faster than it used to be, okay? And is becoming wealthier much younger. Today, you have so many people who are, probably wealthy and are like, say, for example, 24, 25, right? And that is the truth about our country, okay? The other myth that we need to, also break is the fact that wealth is isolated or is a conversation for the tier one of the country. It's not. Okay, wealth today is actually a lot more tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. There are far many more millionaires and billionaires in, say, for example, Ranchi as compared to, say, for example, Mumbai. What I'm trying to say is that there are so many millionaires and billionaires who are coming out of from these two cities and tier 2, tier 3 cities. And what we normally say is that demand for a wealth management service or a product is not a problem. It is the supply that is the problem.
Hmm.
We are not able to actually get to the, to the depth of the country and to be able to offer the, advisory that is required for people to manage their wealth in a professional manner, right? There is a lot of interest from younger people from tier 2, tier 3 cities and towns about investing in asset classes that are beyond the traditional asset classes, like the real estate, gold, deposits, all of that, right? There is a lot of demand for being able to invest in, thanks to some sort of mainstreaming of concepts like private equity, shark tanks, things like alternates, things like commercial real estate, things like multiple other complex products for that matter, right? So there's a lot of shift in their thinking about trying out financialization of their money and assets and putting money into those as compared to the traditional ones, right? And that is where you must understand how should one actually market your service in this backdrop. One of the reasons that maybe I didn't speak about is that we had to identify a consumer facing proposition that was, for that matter, elastic in nature, right? For it to be able to subsume a lot of things that I would want to do across various business categories. So Let's Do It Right would be true for my wealth business, for my mass affluent business, for my HNI business, for my UHNI business, for my investment banking business, for my capital services business, all of it, right? So it had a certain universality to it. And therefore, if I was to take my Let's Do It Right business now and market myself with the mass affluent business, I will do it in a certain manner, bringing it back to Let's Do It Right, bringing it back to Nuvama, right? And that's how I would go about building this entire wealth and asset management play that I have in the country to be, again, uniform, consistent, and coherent, right? And that's largely the way we kind of do our initiatives. Wealth business for us is the mass affluent business, okay, which is where a lot of our energies are spent talking to end consumers and retail businesses and retail consumers for that matter. Our UHNI business is also a end consumer retail business, but speaks to a very, very high UHNI clientele where terms of marketing are slightly more refined and defined. Our asset management business talks to a lot of our channel partners, and their customers become our wealth managers for that matter. So how do you kind of then drive that B2B kind of, so it's a B2B2C kind of a product.
Right.
And you have your institutional equities and everything that actually speaks to large FIIs, DIIs, funds, all of that coming into India, and how do you kind of...
Just a follow up there because I'm curious. So when you see UHNIs, just very curious to know what channels of marketing do you deploy? Is it like a 1:1 relationship, or where does marketing come in?
So yes, in UHNI, it's extremely important, Kavan, to actually have a very, very... see, I'll tell you, there are around 25,000 odd families in the country who can be defined as UHNI. Okay. Right? And that's the universe for you, out of which we manage roughly around 4,500, 5,000 families in the country, right? And that's the big money, right? It's almost like 100 crores and above each family, right? So therefore, for them to be able to kind of tap into, you have to be very precise, right? There has to be, a personalization at scale that is available for you. You can't generally give them something that is available off the shelf. Things have to be curated and tailored for their preferences, right? You cannot actually just create the same experience that you create for your other businesses and expect that to be accepted well by this audience, right? So therefore, it has to be extremely personalized. There has to be a sense of exclusivity that actually comes in and gets built in, right? So your strategies will involve, like, for example, partnership with luxury brands, association to cater to this demographic, right? That's where it actually makes a lot of sense for us to, dive into events like the Lux events for that matter, where, a lot of people come together and congregate, right? Then, for example, in my opinion, this category of people require high touch communication, right? They require, what do I say? I mean, exclusive previews, private events, personalized direct mailing exercises, reaching out to the same kind of class that people will be actually put together, things like that. You can't really have a very passive engagement module with them,
Got it.
right? Then, of course, what you also need to do and invest is to ensure that your own perception about your own brand and value has to be elevated and uplifted, right?
Right.
You can't be a brand that is perceived as a brand that is extremely for a certain set of audiences and therefore not relevant for them. So your perception and value has to be top notch, exclusive, superior, a brand that provides great advisory and things like that.
Right.
And so a way to kind of build your brand and identity for the business is very important. Like, for example, we've carved out Nuvama Private, and its identity is the only identity which is a bit different from the entire group's identity, because that one requires a little bit of sheen and polish, right? So a lot of use of gold, a lot of use of, things like that have been built into Nuvama Private. And that's our business that caters to the UHNI business.
Got
so a UHNI business is actually dealt slightly more, handpicked in that manner as compared to your other activities in general.
Very interesting. I think I can directly relate to like a luxury brand marketing team doing various things there. So that is what I wanted to kind of understand. I'll hop on the last question now, and this is a question which I am also always curious to ask CMOs, because we try to solve this. I think I'll ask you a couple of things actually. So there is basically one trend that creativity is becoming a bottleneck for companies, for them to kind of expand faster, be more versatile, be more creative. It's becoming challenging because there are so many shelves to put a product on now. There are so many contextual conversations you need to have, and so on. Most people are thinking in two ways. One is that, hey, let me outsource the entire mandate to some experts or a group of experts who I'll deal with, which could be expensive, but that's fine because I don't want to focus on that capability in-house. Sure. But then parallel, I've also seen a lot of CMOs, even in this podcast series, I've had them tell me, I want to insource everything. I want more control. I don't want to depend on agencies. And, for a lot of companies who, let's say, are mid-level, they're considering this, saying that, we don't get that much energy from the best people at big agencies. That's why we have to go to the mediocre ones, and then they're not as good as we want them to. So they're also insourcing. So I wanted to know, when it comes to you, what's been your outlook on the overall market, right? Where are people now continuing to build more in-house teams, or are they now thinking to outsource things? And if you think it's a combination, I'd love to know, what do you think people are doing in-house? What do you think people will continue doing externally?
Yeah. For me, it's a definite combination actually, Kavan. For what we are trying to do, and I can speak about myself out here and my team, is that we are building capability internally. And for, projects that require massive effort in being able to kind of stand out and be very creative in the way we kind of go out and speak, we bring in on board, consultants, and for that matter, agencies on board to help us do this, right? And therefore, I think for us, it's been that way. And I think that's the trend largely in, the entire of the industry, or not necessarily ours, but across, I think, businesses where, capabilities have been built internally to ensure that there is a certain pace at which work can come out, because that content creation and availability of content at a certain pace has become a requisite and a mandatory for everyone, right? And therefore, I think building capacity in-house is a no-brainer, and I don't think anyone has a choice. Because if you continue to kind of, pass this out, the pace at which you need content never comes. And a lot of automation, for that matter, has come in to help in this domain, but the output is still, desired for. I think it's not something that is really up there. It's largely a cut paste, and it's like a adaptation job more so in automation as compared to actually thinking afresh and being able to think, for the journey and for the contextual intervention that is required. For us, it is internal as well as external. Like I just told you, where we needed, an Ogilvy to come in and help us, we did reach out to Ogilvy and, took their help to get us the most a fun campaign to, talk about ourselves. And where we need content on like an hourly basis, we kind of tap into our teams internally. And I think that's where the industry will go, and that's where the businesses will go. There's no running away from this. And thanks to, AI and the chat GPTs and the Discords of the world, creation of content internally is also becoming, good, right? For that matter, like dynamic images through Midjourney or dynamic images through, say, for example, any other platform that is helping us create all of this is a boon for the internal teams, right? And
Right.
I am asking constantly my teams to actually look into these platforms to ensure that they take help and create content that helps us. It needs to be vetted by human intelligence to be able to stay right for us, and therefore using of or usage of these tools for the internal teams is extremely helpful.
Awesome. So I think my takeaways would be is that I think for speed you need to get stuff in house, but
Yes.
for expertise and maybe scale in a couple of campaigns, you need to partner with an external team. And my next question was about AI, so I'm glad you covered it as well. I think the takeaway there, which a lot of people also are echoing, is it's a great co-pilot.
And like I said, co-pilot, because see, speed often actually comes with you giving away on the output, because most of the times you prioritize speed. Now these platforms actually are ensuring that output is also at par when you want to actually get speed as the predomination of your work, right? So therefore these platforms are definitely a great area.
Awesome. Thanks, Sujay. I think that's our time. I know I went overboard, but I'm really glad you decided to give us such a long time on a Tuesday morning. So really appreciate that. And for everybody who's stuck along, thanks for tuning in till now, and watch out for the next one.